VIOFO A229 Pro Vantrue N4 Pro Comparison. If you're stuck between the VIOFO A229 Pro 3CH and the Vantrue N4 Pro S, it's easy to get lost in the specifications. Both are premium 4K dashcam systems built around Sony Starvis 2 sensors. Both can record the road and cabin, and both offer features such as HDR, Wi-Fi, GPS, voice control, and buffered parking mode. On paper, they look remarkably similar. After looking beyond the headline specifications, though, the differences become more interesting. The VIOFO A229 Pro 3CH takes a more flexible approach, with a separate interior camera and strong front and rear recording. The Vantrue N4 Pro S takes a more integrated approach and adds some features that make it particularly appealing to rideshare and professional drivers. Neither one is perfect, and I wouldn't choose between them simply because one has a longer feature list. The more important question is how you plan to use the camera, how much you care about interior coverage, and whether you value maximum image quality or a more comprehensive all-in-one setup. Similarities. Both cameras are built around Sony Starvis 2 technology, which is one of the biggest reasons their image quality is so good. Both use the Sony IMX678 sensor for the front 4K camera, recording at 38840 x 2160 at 30 FPS. That gives both cameras plenty of detail for everyday driving and makes them considerably more capable than older 1080p dashcams. Both also use HDR to handle difficult lighting. In practice, this is particularly useful when you're driving at night and dealing with headlights, streetlights, shadows, or rapidly changing light. Neither camera can guarantee a perfectly readable license plate in every situation, but both are designed to preserve more useful detail when lighting isn't ideal. Night recording is another area where both perform well. The VIOFO uses HDR Night Vision 2.0, while the Vantrue uses Night Vision 4.0 and PlatePix technology. User feedback for both cameras generally praises their low-light performance, although real-world results can vary considerably depending on windshield reflections, weather, road lighting, exposure settings, and how close or fast another vehicle is moving. Both also offer 5 GHz Wi-Fi, which is much more useful than it might sound. Large 4K video files can be frustrating to transfer, so the faster Wi-Fi connection makes it easier to find and download an important clip to your phone without constantly removing the memory card. Voice control is available on both as well. You can use voice commands for functions such as locking footage, taking a photo, or controlling the microphone, which can be convenient when you do not want to reach for the camera while driving. Both use supercapacitors rather than traditional lithium batteries. That's an important consideration because dashcams can spend hours sitting inside hot or cold vehicles. Supercapacitors are generally better suited to those temperature swings than conventional batteries. Parking mode is another major similarity. Both systems support buffered parking recording, so they can capture footage around an event rather than only starting to record after something has already happened. However, proper parking mode operation requires the camera to have a continuous power source. So anyone planning to use this feature regularly should factor a compatible hardwire kit into the overall cost. Differences. The first thing to clarify is that the A229 Pro comes in different configurations. The comparison here is specifically with the A229 Pro 3CH, which adds an interior camera. The 2-channel A229 Pro is a different proposition because it only records the front and rear. Once you're comparing the 3-channel versions, the VIOFO and Vantrue are much closer competitors. The biggest difference is how the interior camera is designed. The A229 Pro 3CH uses a separate, small interior camera, whereas the N4 Pro S has its cabin camera integrated into the main front camera housing. That might seem like a minor design choice, but it makes a difference in everyday use. With the VIOFO, you have more freedom to position the cabin camera where you actually need it. You can mount the main front camera higher and keep the dashboard setup relatively discreet while positioning the interior camera to get a better view of passengers. The Vantrue's integrated cabin camera makes the installation more straightforward because there's one less separate camera to position. For some people, that's preferable. The downside is that you're more limited by the position of the main camera if you want the best possible view of the cabin. For rideshare drivers, this becomes an important consideration. If you're driving Uber, Lyft, or taxi passengers regularly, interior footage can be valuable because an incident isn't necessarily going to happen directly in front of the vehicle. Having the cabin recorded gives you another perspective that a conventional front and rear dashcam simply can't provide. Image quality is another important difference. The A229 Pro 3CH has a 4K front camera and a 2K rear camera using a Sony IMX675 sensor. The Vantrue N4 Pro S has a 4K front camera, a 2.5K rear camera, and a 1080p interior camera. The difference isn't enormous on paper between 2K and 2.5K rear recording, but the VIOFO's rear camera is still a strong part of the system. The bigger point is that both cameras give you significantly more detail at the front than at the interior, which makes sense because the road ahead is generally where you'll want the highest resolution. The Vantrue does have an advantage in its overall 3-channel configuration, particularly because its rear camera is 2.5K, and its system is designed around recording all 3 views simultaneously. The VIOFO, however, is very compelling if your priority is having strong front and rear evidence while retaining flexibility with the interior camera. Storage is another clear difference. The A229 Pro supports microSD cards up to 512 GB, while the N4 Pro S supports cards up to 1 TB. For an average driver, 512 GB is already a lot of storage, so I wouldn't consider the Vantrue's 1 TB capacity essential. For someone driving 8 or 10 hours a day, however, particularly while using all 3 cameras, the additional capacity becomes more useful. 3 cameras generate a lot of footage, and the larger card gives you more breathing room before older recordings are overwritten. The physical design is also quite different. The A229 Pro has a relatively discreet wedge-style design, while the N4 Pro S has a more substantial tubular-style appearance and a 3.19-inch screen. The larger Vantrue display is convenient when checking footage directly on the camera, although I wouldn't make the screen size a deciding factor. Most people will probably use the phone app or a computer when they need to examine an important recording closely. The VIOFO's smaller and more discreet design may be preferable if you don't want a large camera sitting prominently on the windshield. The separate cabin camera also gives it an advantage when you're trying to keep the primary camera positioned high and out of the way. GPS is another area where VIOFO takes an interesting approach. The A229 Pro supports multiple satellite systems, including GPS, GLONASS, Galileo, and Beidou. That gives it a more comprehensive multi-constellation positioning setup. I wouldn't assume that automatically means dramatically faster acquisition or more accurate positioning in every situation, but it is a nice feature for anyone who cares about accurate location and speed data. The Vantrue also includes GPS, with the module incorporated into its mounting system. It works well for normal use, but the VIOFO offers more satellite system coverage on paper. The VIOFO also comes with a CPL filter. This isn't the sort of feature that sounds impressive in an advertisement, but it's genuinely useful. A circular polarizing filter can reduce reflections and glare coming from the windshield, potentially making the footage cleaner in bright conditions. Its effectiveness depends on your windshield, camera angle, lighting, and installation, so I wouldn't expect miracles, but it's a worthwhile accessory to have included. Temperature handling is another area where both are designed with harsh conditions in mind, but their published ranges aren't identical. The VIOFO is rated around 5 degrees Fahrenheit to 149 degrees Fahrenheit, while the Vantrue is rated around -4 degrees Fahrenheit to 140 degrees Fahrenheit. Both use supercapacitors, so either should be better suited to temperature extremes than a battery-powered dashcam. The differences in the published ranges aren't large enough that I'd make the decision based on temperature alone. Which one is better for everyday driving? For an ordinary driver who wants front, rear, and cabin coverage without spending more than necessary, the VIOFO A229 Pro 3CH is a very balanced option. The separate cabin camera is particularly useful because you can position it independently. The 4K front camera gives you the highest level of detail where it matters most, while the 2K rear camera provides solid coverage behind you. You also get 5 GHz Wi-Fi, multi-system GPS, voice control, parking modes, and the included CPL filter. The Vantrue N4 Pro S feels more like a system designed around maximum coverage and long recording sessions. Its 4K front, 2.5K rear, and 1080p cabin cameras give you three perspectives, and the 1 terabyte storage limit is useful if you're recording for long periods. That makes the Vantrue particularly interesting for rideshare and professional drivers. If you're spending most of your working day in the vehicle and regularly carrying passengers, the integrated cabin camera and larger storage capacity make a lot of sense. For someone who just wants protection during their daily commute, though, the extra capacity and more elaborate setup may not be worth the additional cost. Reliability is something I'd consider. One thing that makes this comparison less straightforward is user feedback surrounding reliability. The information available for the Vantrue N4 Pro S includes some positive experiences with video quality, but also reports of units developing problems after only a few months. The reliability feedback provided here is notably less positive than the feedback about its image quality. That doesn't mean the N4 Pro S is inherently unreliable or that every unit will have problems. User reports can be affected by installation, memory cards, power supplies, firmware, heat, and individual defective units. Still, if you're spending around $380 on a dashcam, reliability is something I'd want to consider rather than focusing entirely on specifications. The VIOFO A229 Pro also isn't immune to the occasional complaint, but the information provided for this comparison shows more consistently positive feedback around its video and night performance. That makes it easier to recommend as the safer all-around choice. Price and overall value. The price difference is significant enough to matter. Based on the prices provided, the A229 Pro is around $279.99, while the Vantrue N4 Pro S is around $379.99. That $100 difference doesn't tell the entire story because neither setup should be considered completely ready to go without thinking about storage and installation. The VIOFO doesn't include a micro SD card, and proper parking mode use requires appropriate power installation. The same general consideration applies to the Vantrue, particularly if you want continuous parking surveillance. The Vantrue's higher price buys you the larger 1 terabyte storage ceiling, 3-channel coverage, a larger screen, and its particular approach to night recording and cabin monitoring. The VIOFO's lower price gets you very strong video quality, a separate interior camera, 512GB storage support, multi-system GPS, a discrete design, and a CPL filter. In other words, the Vantrue isn't necessarily overpriced. You're paying for a more comprehensive system. The question is whether you'll actually use those extra capabilities. Verdict. For most people caught between these two, I'd choose the VIOFO A229 Pro 3CH. The reason isn't that it has every advantage. It doesn't. The Vantrue N4 Pro S has the larger storage ceiling, a slightly higher resolution rear camera, a large screen, and a very appealing 3-channel design for professional drivers. If you're an Uber, Lyft, taxi, or delivery driver who spends long hours behind the wheel and wants extensive coverage of the cabin, the Vantrue is a legitimate choice. But for a typical owner who wants a dependable dashcam rather than a feature showcase, the VIOFO offers a better balance. You get excellent 4K front footage, strong rear recording, a flexible separate cabin camera, useful multi-system GPS, 5 GHz Wi-Fi, voice control, parking options, and a CPL filter, all while spending roughly $100 less. The separate interior camera is probably the feature I'd appreciate most in the VIOFO. It gives you more control over what the camera actually sees, which can be more useful in practice than simply having an interior camera built into the main housing. I'd pick the Vantrue N4 Pro S if interior recording is a major priority. You're a rideshare or professional driver, you need the ability to use a 1 terabyte card, or you simply prefer its integrated design and larger screen. I'd pick the VIOFO A229 Pro 3CH if you want excellent overall video quality, a more discreet and flexible setup, strong front and rear coverage, and better value without sacrificing the features that actually matter. Neither is a bad choice. The Vantrue is the more comprehensive system, while the VIOFO feels like the more balanced one. For someone genuinely stuck between the two, I'd lean toward the VIOFO unless the Vantrue's extra storage and professional-oriented 3-channel setup solve a specific problem you have. That's what makes the A229 Pro 3CH the easier recommendation for the average driver. Quick overview. VIOFO A229 Pro 3CH. A strong all-around choice with 4K front, 2K rear, and a separate interior camera. It offers flexible camera positioning, multi-system GPS, 5 GHz Wi-Fi, voice control, parking modes, and an included CPL filter. Its lower price also makes it easier to justify for everyday driving. Vantrue N4 Pro S, a more comprehensive setup aimed particularly at rideshare and professional drivers. It records 4K front, 2.5K rear, and 1080p inside, supports up to 1 TB storage, and has an integrated cabin camera and larger screen. The trade-offs are its higher price and some reported reliability concerns. Video coverage. VIOFO offers 4K front plus 2K rear plus interior, while Vantrue offers 4K front plus 2.5K rear plus 1080p interior. Interior camera. VIOFO uses a separate camera that can be positioned independently. Vantrue integrates the cabin camera into the main unit. Storage. VIOFO supports up to 512 GB. Vantrue supports up to 1 TB. GPS. VIOFO supports GPS, GLONASS, Galileo, and Beidou, giving it broader satellite system support. Installation. VIOFO's separate cabin camera provides more positioning flexibility, while Vantrue's integrated design keeps the setup more straightforward. Price, VIOFO is around $279.99 based on the supplied pricing. Vantrue is around $379.99. Rideshare use. Vantrue's 3-camera coverage and larger storage capacity make it particularly appealing for drivers who spend long hours carrying passengers. Everyday driving. VIOFO offers a strong combination of image quality, coverage, flexibility, and price without adding features that every driver necessarily needs. One concern. The supplied user feedback shows more reliability complaints with the Vantrue, so that is worth weighing alongside its stronger feature set. Overall recommendation, VIOFO A229 Pro 3CH for most drivers. Choose the Vantrue N4 Pro S if extensive interior coverage, 1 TB storage, and long shift use are priorities.